And now, coming to you live from the City of Angels, Los Angeles, California, it's the Sheena Metal Experience with your host, Sheena Metal, only on KGRA Digital Broadcasting.
Hi, and welcome to the Sheena Metal Experience on KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. I'm your host, Sheena Metal. I'm a psychic medium. I'm an energetic healer. I'm an interfaith minister. I'm a 29-year talk radio host in Los Angeles and beyond. I'm a creative and a performing artist and a paranormal survivor. And I come to you live from my home in Southern California every Friday at 3 o'clock Pacific time. This show is about spirituality. It's about creativity. It's about humanity. It's about passion. It's about service. It's about working to become and then maintaining being your best you in this big, beautiful world. And most importantly, inspiring others to do the same. And every week on the show, it may be my show because it is the Sheena Metal Experience after all, but it is always undoubtedly and forever your experience. My guest today is one of my favorite men in the whole world. He has been a best friend of mine since we were 14 years old. We went through high school together and beyond, and he is brilliantly talented at everything. For anybody who ever saw my first cable show, Sheena Metal's Freakin' Rock Review, back in my other life, Kyle created all the look and did the makeup and directed it, and he's such a super talented person. A brilliant graphic artist and also a wonderful magician and mentalist. So that's kind of weird. You grow up with a best friend and then you become a psychic and he becomes a mentalist. But I guess that's the yin and yang of life. Please welcome my wonderful friend, Kyle Merck, to the show. How are you, my friend? It's so good to have you here.
Hi, sweetie. How you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, it's weird, right? I went one direction and you went the other.
Well, I think we both came from we grew from the same root experience. Was a background in theater and trying to bring pleasure to people in the art of performance. So it's you can really, if you follow the stepping stones of each of our careers, it's not that hard to see how either of us got I think to where we are right now. So
yeah, I agree.
To follow. Yeah.
Do you remember after high school, when we were about 19, when my mom first started talking about being a psychic?
Yeah, I do actually. That was my pre-magician days, I should say. So and I'd had enough we'll call them uncanny experiences of my own that I was open and receptive to it all the time. So yeah, I do remember great conversations that we had. So
it was so interesting because as a kid, I knew there was something different about her, but I don't think I knew really what it was. And then one day she just started talking about it, right? And it had been something that she had held inside of her for so many years. And even now, I mean, she's been gone almost 8 years. I wish she was here because there are more questions I wish I could ask her. One of the interesting things that she told me, the maybe a couple years before she died, she did my Haunted Playground radio show, and I did not know this. Do you know about the lore of Hat Man?
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay, so there is a lore in the paranormal community about an interdimensional, we think, a creature called Hat Man, and people tend to see him at night. Or in strange places. He usually always has all black and a hat. So either a suit, trench coat, dress coat, and the hat can be anything. Top hat, Panama, fedora, 3-point hat, all different kinds of things. And usually lurking somewhere, watching people while they sleep. And sometimes, the feeling, what psychologists call sleep paralysis, where you feel like something's pressing you down in the night. It's interesting because I believe now, with all the clients that I have that have had Hat Man experiences and people I've met at conferences and whatnot, that they're actually interested in folks that have gifts, because it seems to be, I think they want to know why some human beings are gifted, and and open to it, and some human beings don't and realize they have gifts or have not. Anyway, so I'm on the phone with my mom. It's a couple years before she died, and I started talking about Hat Man, and she said, "Oh, that happened to me." Now, my mom and I told each other everything except Scorpios have secrets. So I said, "What do you mean?" So she tells me this story that when she was 5 years old and living in Louisville, that she was sitting in a park all by herself, which, latchkey kid. And this man walked up to her in a black suit and a trench coat and a hat. And he asked her something really weird. I don't remember at this moment. He opened up the trench coat and there were all these like kids in the coat, like kids inside the coat. Like, in the 70s when guys would open a trench coat and there'd be like watches for sale. Anyway, her mother died shortly after that, and she was put in the orphanage. And in the orphanage, she asked a lady in the orphanage, told her it happened to her. And this lady in the orphanage told her that sometimes when men expose their genitals to children, they see them as kids. Okay, so the questions I have about this are, first of all, who tells a 7-year-old that? And secondly, what child sees genitals and thinks it's a child? Because I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of genitals, but I never confuse them with children. So anyway, she thought nothing of it. So a few years later, one day she's at school and the lady from the orphanage comes and says, "Here, change into this dress. We're never going back to the orphanage. You don't need your stuff." Stuck her on a train and sent her to Poughkeepsie in New York, where my people I knew as my grandparents were waiting for her. So my grandparents lived in this giant colonial estate, 47 rooms outside of Poughkeepsie in a town called Wappingers Falls. And the kids' bedrooms, my mother had 2 adopted brothers and an adopted sister. Their bedrooms were all on the 3rd floor. And in front of the 3rd floor, there's this giant tree. So she's going to sleep the first night and she hears this giggling. And she goes to the window and there is the man in the hat sitting on a branch, 3 stories up, swinging his legs, laughing. And every night for the first month she was there, she dealt with this guy. Now, you keep in mind, my mom didn't know what a hat man was. Like, you can't really make up a story if you don't know the story you're making up.
Right.
And I thought, isn't that so weird? My mom had a hat man follow her. And just the weirdest things that you never think they're gonna be part of your life. So I think because she was gifted, she had a lot of strange experiences. And every house we ever lived in, she had experiences and things happened. And then, this place, I didn't realize till about 6 months ago, I was being interviewed on an Orange County paranormal show. And this guy told me that they call Huntington Beach Hauntington Beach now, which I think is hysterical because so many people that grew up here are now talking about their paranormal experiences. Whereas when we were kids, it was so fundamentalist Christian here, you didn't dare say that, right? And now people are like, "Oh yeah, my house was haunted. Oh yeah, mine too."
Well, it's funny that you mentioned it because I've never heard the Hat Man story, as I mentioned earlier. But now that you're telling it to me, I'm recalling having one of those experiences myself. I mean, you remember my house in Huntington Beach. We had you go down that hallway, and we had my room, we had the TV room, and then we had my brother's room. And my parents could like having the TV room there in the middle because they could hear either one of us on either side if we woke up. And they tell me a story in the late 70s that I was screaming and yelling that there was some guy in my closet. And I mean, they told me all about it the next day. "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I don't remember it. I don't remember waking up. They kept me up for an hour afterwards to make sure I was okay and put me to bed, completely blanked out of the whole situation. And so maybe that was my Hat Man experience, I guess.
Well, and I've always suspected that you have gifts, and that's what we'll talk about next, right? I mean, so I've always thought of you, and I could be wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong. I've always thought of you as somebody who had was a lot more psychically gifted and connected than maybe you would admit to, because you're not somebody that gets sucked into believing in everything before you use your discernment.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I've had a number of unexplainable events. I think everyone out there's had deja vu. Of course, I've certainly had that. I had an interesting thing just last week. I was watching a Penn and Teller on TV, their new episode, and they had Penn pick a number and he picked 7. I'm like, oh damn, I probably should have tried to guess the number. And then they had Teller pick a number, and I went 22, and sure enough, he called out 22 from any even number from 1 to 100. So I had out of a 1 in 50 shot, I picked it. So, and I've done that a number of times where I've like talking to somebody. It's like, oh well, I wasn't home today. Oh, that's right. You probably had like an anniversary or something yesterday, right? How did you know it was our anniversary? Oh, okay. Well, just so I've got all these like different things that I can kind of like intuit, I guess. But yeah, I'm
that's gifts.
I'm a skeptic by nature. I've always side on the this is going to sound so cynical, but if you expect to be disappointed, you're never disappointed. So
That's a good way to think of it, because I expect never to be disappointed, and I'm always disappointed, Kyle.
Right. But being a magician for 25 years, and then 15 of that as a mentalist, there was a transition point for me where instead of just doing sleight of hand for people at cocktail parties, I kind of realized that people would watch the cards and, oh yeah, that's neat, and they'd go back to their drink and they'd move on down the road. But if you present something where you're going to have someone write down a phone number and you're going to burn it up and you're going to rub the ashes on your sleeve and you're going to concentrate, you're going to divine their phone number. Well, I mean, that's the stuff that cults and religions were made out of. So that to me had a much more resounding impact. But I was interested in it from probably the earlier age of the interesting little 22, and oh, it's your anniversary, and because I think that stuff does fascinate people, and what I do is I consider this a theatrical performance in which I'm simulating what someone that actually had gifts would do. So for me, it's a piece of theater. But I know that for other people, it's something that they really believe in, and so I don't knock it. I tread kind of lightly. I try to treat it respectful. I when I perform it, like I said, it's everything's scripted, everything's a show. There's a lot of mentalists out there that will. It's kind of controversial, but they do what they call the disclaimer, in their show. I'm person XYZ, and though I have no psychic abilities, I'm using my other 5 senses to simulate a 6th, or whatever. And I've never really kind of been into that whole disclaiming. For me, it's a piece of theater, and if you want to believe I have special gifts, I'll let you. And if you want to believe it's just a trick, I'll let you do that too. And if you want to come up and say hi to me after the show and give me your opinion, I'll agree with whatever your opinion is, because it's not so much about me. It's you coming and getting to experience something that is just a little bit 5 degrees from what you're normal and used to experiencing. So
awesome. So you've got some really bad feedback. Will you do me a huge favor? Go out and come back in, and I'm going to talk till you get back.
All right. Let me try that.
You were fine, and then all of a sudden you started sounding like there was a dragon in there with you.
Okay. So from
all right. So you got to love these streaming programs. They're fantastic, and they make a great virtual studio. But sometimes your Wi-Fi and their Wi-Fi aren't playing nice together, and then things get weird. So, yeah, it's funny because I've always thought to be a good mentalist, you have to be a little bit psychic, or to be a good magician, or to be, in a lot of ways, a good actor, or a good musician, or a writer, because aren't writers channeling? I was talking about how I think that to be good at anything where you're up in front of an audience, it helps to be a little empathic, a little intuitive. I mean, that writers are channeling, right? that's a co-creation between you and spirit. And writing music is a co-creation between you and spirit. And acting, you're on a stage with a bunch of people in a play, and the curtain goes up and you think, how in the hell am I going to remember my lines for 2 hours? And you blink and the curtain's going down and it's done.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of what the theatrical experience is about. I mean, you can't go up and I mean, there's some actors that maybe could go up and just read a grocery list and expect it to be entertaining. But you've got to make some sort of type of connection. I mean, classic case in point would be Billy Joel was never a steel worker, never worked on a fishing boat, but both Allentown and the Downeaster Alexa are great songs in which he's able to empathize with those, those people in those industries and produce a great work of art. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the more that we open up to the fact that spiritual gifts are part of our world, we don't have to fear them or think they're so weird or think that in order to have them, you have to be wearing a stars and moons muumuu and have a stuffed owl pinned to your shoulder. I mean, there's nothing weird about it. It was funny because I did a pilot in 2015 with a bunch of psychics, kind of like a Real Psychics of LA kind of thing. And we're in the conference room with all the finalists, right? And they're all like in druid robes and dangly bracelets, and it looked like a Stevie Nicks concert. And there I am dressed like I just fell out of the LL Bean catalog, and I was laughing, and I said to the producer, like, is it okay because one of these things is not like the others? She's like, no, it's great because you sort of represent the fact that you don't have to look like a psychic to be one.
Right.
And that's when I went, oh yeah, that's the kind of cool thing about me, right? When I do my lives, I'm very much a New Englander and a Californian, and I swear like a sailor. And I always say, if you don't want a psychic that swears like a sailor, then I'm not the psychic for you. But I think it's so important that you organically are yourself.
Right.
And I think it's probably the same thing being a mentalist, right? You're letting a lot of your own warmth and making people comfortable come through, so that people feel comfortable with you. I think if you're up there being inauthentic to yourself, people are going to think there's something weird about you, and then they're not really going to be accepting the show in the way they should be.
Right. And for myself as a magician and performer, I'm also a creator. So I've been doing this long enough that I've created a whole litany of my own personal effects and routines, and even stuff that I'm doing that might have been invented by somebody else. I'll rewrite my own scripts for them because I want those scripts to convey who I am. I mean, I'm not just up there to entertain you. I'm kind of selfishly, wanting to get a little bit of feedback on, okay, enough about you. What do you think of me? So, that's how you hope to advance. It's not me just going up there and being like just some cover band. You want to be able to put your own spin on the song that makes it, shows a little bit about who you are. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's wonderful. Because I think now as we're becoming more as a species tuned into energy, that's what we're looking for. And I think all along it's been my theory that that's what we've always called star quality, right? It's the energy that comes out of somebody that makes you want to be near them. And it's funny, we have reconnected with a bunch of people from high school. And for me, it really started, 3 or 4 years ago. We went to a funeral of one of our friends that we were in theater with that passed. And there were a bunch of folks there. And it's kind of continued now that I've moved back to where we went to high school. And now we all get together every month. And so many of us are becoming reconnected. And it's wonderful that now that I look back on what I do now as a spiritual person, I wonder sometimes, was I ever that great of an actor? Or is there just something about me that makes people feel comfortable with me and want to be near me? And maybe that's why people like the character so much. Because so many times when I was broadcasting this show, when it was in its radio form, and I would broadcast it from the Hollywood Improv 4 times a year, so many people would come up to me afterwards and say, I just feel like we should be best friends, or I feel like you're my long lost best friend. And it took me a while to sort of associate that that's a thing that I have, right? It's a kind of spiritual gift People are near me and they want to keep being near me. Maybe that's why people like the characters that I did. Maybe I wasn't some, fantastic thespian. Maybe I just have the ability of being likable.
I would certainly agree with you, but I think you're selling yourself short, because I mean, I remember, for those watching outside, we had our little theater group, and they'd leave the classroom and the theater open during lunch, and all the theater geeks would hang out there in the theater and in the small stage area that we had. And I think you had a gravity about you that, people wanted. There are certain people that people want to gravitate towards, and you were certainly
Right.
you were certainly one of those. And I think whether you worked at that ability or you had that ability naturally, I think you were certainly able to use that ability to, create interesting theatrical characters, and both in high school and college, and even beyond
Oh,
that.
I most definitely always had that. When I was in kindergarten, I remember kids would follow me around on the playground, and it made me nervous because, I'm very shy by nature, and I'm actually quite an introverted person.
Yep.
It's taken me many years to learn to become more extroverted. And now I call myself an extroverted introvert. So I'm like an introvert who has learned how to become an extrovert on the outside. And I remember kids would follow me around and say, like, well, where should we go now? Well, what should we do now? And it would make me nervous because I was like, I don't know. So it is something that I was born with. And I think I'm very fortunate that with the guidance of spirit, I have been allowed to use that to find different aspects of my life where I could use that ability to help people or to entertain people or to make people feel better about themselves. And at the same time, allowing me to be happy within myself and have a happy life. It makes me sad when I meet people who are actors or musicians or writers or psychics or whatever they are, and they're so good at what they do, but they just hate every minute of it, and they're so uncomfortable, and they never for a minute get to feel good in their skin about any of it. And I think that's such a shame that every day when you walk off stage or the camera shuts down, the first thing you think is, oh, I sucked, I was horrible. I mean, we all have off nights, and we all have shows that we know are probably not as great as other shows. But wow, I mean, to never, ever be able to enjoy your gift, I think that's just tragic.
Well, I think that's what draws a lot of people to performing, right? Is the lure of the applause, that little buzz that you get just when you're either just about to get on stage and you're nervous as all get out, and your tongue is sticking to the roof of your mouth, and okay, I'm going to get out there and do my show. And I've had, a number of shows that I've done personally where it's like, I'm driving to the gig and I'm just, I don't want to do this show. I don't want to do this show. And it's ironic that those shows, I drive home from those particular gigs. God, that was one of the better shows I've done all month. That was a great show. So to me, that nervousness, that energy really kind of helps, feed me. I mean, you're talking about being an introvert, and, I am too, as you well know. But you get me on stage and I become a character. I become, I don't know, a little piece of that, which I hope I really am. I don't know. I don't know if it's the best way to phrase that, but it's that addiction and it's a shame that, there are a number of people that only feel alive when they're performing. Yeah. And they need that to fill some hole that they have.
Yeah, I know. I agree. For me, it's always been about the audience. It's always been about entertaining the audience, and maybe my addiction is service. It's always been about how can I make other people happy? How can I make them feel better? What can I do that people would love? Even now with my spiritual practice, I think, like, what would be a good thing? Like, what's the next workshop? What would people love? It's funny because what has made me so good in my careers sometimes doesn't really benefit me in life, because always thinking about what pleases people maybe is not the best way to live your life. But it's certainly in my various careers in life, I think has been a good thing, because I'm always thinking about what's the next thing that can make the world a better place.
Right.
And I remember once having a discussion with a guy that I was dating in my early 20s. I remember we were in a Blockbuster video. Isn't that weird? Some things you never forget. We had just started dating, and he was a musician. And I said to him, isn't it great to perform because you help so many people and you move so many people? And he was like, well, yeah, but I got to tell you, I do it because it makes me feel good about me. Like, it's the only thing that makes me feel good. And it's the only place that makes me feel good. And I thought, oh, that's so strange. It never occurred to me that it was anybody's like own therapy. Because for me, it was always about how can I move people? And I mean, both are great answers, right? If you're healing yourself or you're healing the world, you're healing someone. And sometimes healing the world as you're trying to heal yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for your friend. That seems kind of like a one-sided or rather transactional existence there,
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly love to perform and love the reaction, and part of me does it for me, but part of me does it because, I hope I have something interesting to say, and I hope that I entertain and intrigue and inspire. I leave the world a little bit better than when I came into it. So to me,
Yeah.
it can be a two-way street as far as the benefits of the attending a show.
What is it about magic that first attracted you? When did you know you wanted to actually get out there and perform it yourself?
Well, I had just attended a convention here in Las Vegas a couple of months ago, and they were asked that very same question. I had actually seen a guy named within the magic circles in the 70s. He was a pretty big deal. His name was Peter Ravine. I saw him perform at the Forum. I thought my dad had gotten a couple of free tickets or something, and we'd gone to see. And it was the Big Illusion show, lions and tigers. And I don't remember a speck of the show. It might not have had any of that stuff in it, but I took to it instantly, and had a magician come to a party, and I started collecting magic as a kid. It was like something the story I tell, which is totally false, but it's good for a laugh, is that, I used to be into magic until I got into high school, and then I discovered girls, and then took a break from magic. And then after I got tired of girls, I got back into magic again. So, my wife hates that joke, but that's sort of how I got into it. And it was just sort of like a little kind of fun thing to do. I think kids are especially susceptible to getting into magic because in a way it's a chance to get one over on, people older and smarter and who know more than you. I mean, if you can, I don't know, tear up a signed card, and now it's right back to normal with their signature on it, and your dad or mom doesn't know how to do it, and the bully down the street doesn't know how to do it, and the people 5 grades older than you don't know how to do it. There's a little bit of power that you get from that, and that sort of becomes attractive. I kind of fell out of it. I had a house fire in 8th grade, which kind of burned up all my stuff, and that was kind of the end of that hobby. But then, being in theater and relatively successful in high school theater, but I really wasn't into the whole auditioning experience when I got out. I didn't do any theater in college, and I wound up doing special effects makeup, as you well know, and getting into that for a little bit. And it just I don't know, I hit age 30, and I was working this weird job. I worked 3 days a week for 12 hours a day, and I had 4 days off, which was not a good equation for me. I had 3 days to make money and 4 days to spend it, so that didn't that didn't really work out so hot for me. So I was looking. I need to pick up a hobby. So, I just had like the 2 childhood hobbies I could revisit is I had played the drums in elementary school band for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half. So maybe I'll pick that up again during the middle of the day. And I did magic as a kid. Maybe I'll pick that up. And so I was talking to my wife, my girlfriend at the time. Actually, no, she was my wife at the time. By then I'd been married. Yeah, I was 30 years old. And I'm like, do I want to do drums? Do I want to get back into magic? Drums or magic? And she says, well, I'd rather pick a card than listen to you bang on the drums all day. Okay. So she actually kind of got me into it. And, I got into it. Like I said, I had 4 days off in the middle of the week, Monday through Thursday, to just sit there and practice all day. And I got really good, really fast. And I joined International Brotherhood of Magicians, which is obviously a worldwide association of magicians. I joined one of their local clubs, and I thought it was going to be super hard to get in. I'm practicing and scripting and taking other people's tricks and writing my own scripts to them, and of course it was no, I just we'll let anybody in the club. It's just a local little club, It's just the Orange County guys, just and went on to become the president of that club and 2 other regional clubs, and kind of never really wanted to let the hand go of the tree that was that. I'm trying to remember the line from Mission Impossible. It says, "You're just like a monkey. You won't let go of one branch until you have a firm grip on the next one." So I was never really willing to, be a full-time performer. One of the jokes is, what's the difference between a pizza and a magician? Is that a pizza can actually feed a family of 4. So, and I think they say the same joke about
that works for musician as well.
I think it was originally written for musicians, but I heard it for magicians. So
that's the best.
So I got kind of really good really fast and caught the eye of a couple of people that were were doing shows locally, and so I started doing shows. I was the house magician at a couple of restaurants, and wound up getting invited to a thing for Nickelodeon or Irvine Spectrum. I got to beat Christina Aguilera in 98 Degrees. So got to perform for them.
Nice.
So it kind of got to be fun, and then I started to realize, well, magic as a business is really a business, and so I started creating my own effects and building my own props and writing my own scripts and put together a book and put it out there into the community, where it landed with a resounding but it was fun to do, and it was enough that it paid for itself. So
that's all you need. That's great.
Yeah, being a graphic artist, I was able to build all the stuff myself and create it all myself and sell enough copies that okay, well, now I've got enough out there to sell and my own copies for me to perform, and I've gotten the pleasure of seeing one of my effects performed in a show that I attended as an audience member. It's like, oh, that's my trick. Oh, what do you know? Hey, that's kind of neat to get to see them play my song, for lack of a better word. So that was kind of, the evolution of that. And then I just sort of started getting more attracted to the mentalism and the psychic stuff. Kind of found a writing / performing partner that we would bounce stuff off of for a while, and kind of went down that road for a bit, and now I'm kind of veering less away from that and more back into the traditional sleight of hand. So
that's great. What about mentalism attracted you, and did you even know, what it was? Or I know I can't ask you how it's done because you're a magician, but it's interesting, right? It's funny because from what I understand about it, I'm going to let you describe it. It's kind of a lot of what, like, I hate to say this, but what bad psychics do, what psychics that are not authentic do, right?
Exactly. There's a number of when people think of the psychic disciplines, they think of maybe precognition, telepathy, telekinesis, mediumship, and these are all things that I couch in a theatrical performance, obviously, but they're all techniques. And hey, if you can really do that stuff, great, all the more power to you. But if you can't, well, I've got a book I can say that teaches you how to do all of that stuff. So what attracted me to it was I was actually I'd always kind of collected the mental magic type of tricks, and I was invited to do a show at the last minute to fill in for somebody, and it was for a youth group, and I generally don't like performing for adolescent audiences, and so I kind of, as politely as I could, tried to get out of the gig. And I'm like, well, they're not. Yeah, I'm not really a magician. I'm a mentalist. Yeah, these kids aren't going to be interested in mentalism. So I kind of used it as an excuse. But they literally, it was the the night of the show, their other performer had canceled, and this girl that I was talking to was going to do anything it took to book me. So I quoted her some ridiculous price, and she went for it. I'm like, damn, I didn't get out of it that way. I told her I'm a mentalist, not a magician. I couldn't get out of it that way. And finally, I was, I don't know, 33, 35 at the time, and this 19-year-old event planner is like, listen, are you a professional performer or not? Yeah. I'll see you at 7 then. And she just hung up on me. And I was like, okay, I guess I better unpack all of those mental effects that I've been collecting and performing. And, I'm sitting there writing out my set list that I was going to do, just like a musician would do. And yeah, that looks like a pretty good show. And I did the show. It was like one of the strongest reactions I had ever gotten. And I was really kind of surprised. And so I mean, it was like standing all the way to the back of the room. And, I've gotten those before, but not all the way back, every single person in the room. I was like, it kind of put me back. I was wondering, well, what happened here that, I didn't change. My show didn't change. What was it that really touched these people? And I pulled the event planner aside a couple of days later, and she said, well, because nobody believes that the rabbit isn't already in the hat, but the stuff you did was real.
Right.
And I knew it wasn't, I'm going to take umbrage with the word real. She used the word real, but I don't know what she meant by the word real. The real could have meant she was really seeing magic. She was really seeing psychic ability, or it was real as in it touched her emotionally. I don't know what she meant by the word real, but it had an impact on her that was, and I'm assuming the rest of the audience, that was greater than anything I had done before. So at that point, I kind of had a paradigm shift of, nobody believes that the rabbit isn't already in the hat. But they believed me when I told them what their phone number was, or what their, I sense you have I sense you have a problem at the moment. There's something financial in your life that's troubling you, right? And getting those hits, whether it was through my own intuition or through magical techniques. But people that were watching the show were actually, I think, more emotionally invested in a mentalism show than they would be emotionally invested in a sleight of hand performance. And that's when the transition happened. So,
yeah. Well, people like to know about them, right? Like, we all want to see a lady be sawed in half.
Well, and I think that's it exactly. In most magic shows, and I try not to be guilty of this, but I've seen enough of them at the castle and whatnot, that a lot of the magic shows, the magician comes out on stage and it's, look what I can do. Look what I'm about. Look at me. Aren't I great? Don't I have such magical powers? And in a mentalism show, it's less about me and it's more about them, and I think that's where it really, makes the difference. I was saying at one point in my show that at one point during the show, I'm going to ask for volunteers and I'm going to need people to come up on stage. I won't embarrass you, but I don't have a show if I don't have you up here to participate in it, because when you're trying to read someone's mind, if no one holds their hand up, there's no minds there to read, and that's the end of the show. Time to serve the coffee and the donuts. So
right.
Yeah.
No, I think people, a live audience, really like being involved, right? The way hecklers go to see comedy shows so they can get attention for heckling.
Right.
The way people line up to get psychic readings because they want something for themselves.
Exactly.
They want to know that there's something for them. What can you tell me about me? And sometimes it's stuff they already know. Like when I do parties, it's a lot of just like, what can you tell me about me? Well, you already know that stuff about you. Why do you want me to tell you that stuff? But they just want you to say, I know you're really special. You know what I mean? They want that thing for themselves.
Right. I think it harkens back to what you were talking about, that other performer who was just going on stage to feed his own spirit. I think in a mentalism show, you can't do that. It's definitely a connection not only between the performer and the onstage volunteer or spectator, but also with the people in the audience, because
Right.
they'll play along. Oh, that person has got an object in their hand, and I'm going to try to tell them what that object is. And the people in the audience, oh, I wonder if it's a key. I wonder if it's a driver's license. And then they'll tap their wife. Hey, it was a driver's license. I knew it was a driver's license. Isn't that kind of cool? So, whether they're whether they believe it's a trick or not, they can participate, and tap into their own inner intuition. So
Yeah. I agree 100%. Yeah, I think it's fun for people. Is there ever a time where you worry, or for you is it almost like acting, in the sense that you have to put all the worry and the what ifs and what if I don't get the thing right and all of that completely out of your head in order to do it right?
well, there's we'll talk a little bit inside baseball here, but yeah, that things don't go wrong. I mean, there was a time when I would perform stuff that had a 70% success rate, and so there'd be that 30% of the time where it doesn't work, and you're like, okay, well, we're just having a hard time connecting. Let's go over here, and I'll try something else with this person. And ironically enough, the failures help make the hits look more realistic. Well, if it was a trick, he would get it every single time, right? So the fact that he missed it with me means that it doesn't mean in their head that I messed up the trick. It means that it must be real, because sometimes you can read it and sometimes you can't, and it's part of the scripting and the framing of the presentation. I'll tell a person, imagine you've written a word on a chalkboard of a classroom, but the lights are out. You've just got a flashlight. You're moving it around the room, and that flashlight catches the chalkboard, and I can just I'm picking up just a letter here and just a letter there. Well, should the method fail, I can always chalk it up to, that flashlight must not have hit enough of those letters for me to been able to get that word. So, but all of those are, we call them in the industry, we call them outs, and all of those outs are planned and scripted. If I miss here, I do this. If I hit here, I take a bow. I've got a friend of mine that he literally he says, I want you to make up a new zodiac sign, because we do the zodiac sign so much he knows my zodiac. Just make up a zodiac sign and put your hand up to the camera. I put my hand up to the camera. He's like, "You're not thinking of Cancer, are you?" I said, "Yeah, I was." Perfect. Blew me away. And I'm like, "That was great. Do that again." Well, the second performance was not nearly as good as the first performance. And once you saw the second and third and fourth performances, the method starts to become transparent. But that's why magicians don't repeat a trick. That's why, when I'm workshopping this stuff, with other people, it's like, okay, well, let's consider every possibility that could go wrong before it goes right, and make sure that even when I'm wrong, it doesn't look like I was wrong. That's
right.
Yeah.
But you know what? You have to do that even as a psychic. And I'll tell you why, because people get this idea that you're 100% accurate. And sometimes when I have a client, like I have this client, and she always at the end of a couple of sessions, she'll give me a list of every single time in the years that I have known her that I wasn't accurate. And it's, there's a million times I was, but she'll point and so I have to stop and say, look, if I knew everything about you, then I would be honestly giving myself the lottery numbers and retiring. I would be God. And even sometimes God doesn't know everything about us, because we have free will and we make changes and we do erratic things. So it's important that you learn sort of how to graciously pivot around that mentality, because human beings can get like a terrier with this obsession that you should know everything about them, and that you should be able to change the outcome of something, even if they're working against it. They have to understand that there's this beautiful thing called free will that God gave us all.
Free will versus fate. Absolutely.
Free will to screw up our own lives or make the wrong decisions, or, but you told me in the beginning that my husband would be more amicable in our breakup. Yeah, but I also didn't tell you to send him emails telling him to go screw himself every other day.
Right.
I mean, you affect the outcome of your own future by your actions. Thoughts are things, actions are things, words are things, and you can change the course of your life by what you decide to put into it or take away from it.
Right. I think that, and I'm a big believer in free will. And I think that, um, as a performer, you run into that type of, well, tell me what the lottery numbers are going to be, or tell me what I had for breakfast this morning, or tell me what I'm going to have for dinner tomorrow night, and it's like, well, it's kind of, I try to remind them, it's kind of like the theory of Schrodinger's cat, the results of the test. Are you familiar with Schrodinger's cat? Have you heard that before? Yeah. So the results of being observed affect the person being observed, so that they don't behave the same way anymore.
Right.
So just the very fact that I've told you something could affect that outcome. If I was to tell you that, I of course I would never do this, but let's use it as an example. I predicted divorce in your near future. Well, if I would never tell somebody something like that, but if you were to tell them that, and then they started just being on a whole a-hole, well, of course they're going to have a divorce, But if they use that as a life lesson of, I don't want to get a divorce, I need to re-examine my life and the decisions that I'm doing that might want to make that person get a divorce, and you can change the course of the river, right?
Right.
So that it doesn't have to flow over the falls, but instead down a gentle glade, or down a gentle grade instead. So,
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. It's why people, if I had a dime for every time, when is my elderly mother going to die? Well, no, I'm not going to tell you that. And first of all, I wouldn't get that answer from spirit. I wouldn't ask for that. And even if I did want to get it and I could get it, we're not supposed to tell you that, because you will change the course of her life and yours if you know when she's going to die. And there's some things we're just not supposed to know. And that's okay. I never would think to ask somebody like, when is someone going to die? Never would ever occur to me. But boy, people are like obsessed with, when are we going to die?
But see, I've already covered that. I was talking to you earlier about outs. When is someone going to die? When they do, you'll find that it was too soon.
Well, now you just sound like the Magic 8 Ball or the great Zohar.
Well, yeah, that's my end of it. My end of it is to give a realistic theatrical experience, and that would be a realistic answer. It doesn't matter when they die. When they do, you will find out in your heart that it was too soon. And I think that's an acceptable answer.
Sure.
To an otherwise ghastly question, quite frankly.
Yes. Now, when you are doing a mentalism show, do people assume you're psychic?
Like I said, I never do the disclaimers. I let them believe what they want to believe. This is I would never stand outside of a movie theater where they were showing the Avengers and go, that was all green screen. When they ripped him in half, right. that was just a digital duplicate. Why ruin the experience for them?
Yeah. Yes.
And I don't know why someone comes to one of my shows. I have no idea. Maybe they want to be entertained. Maybe they want to just get out of the rain. Maybe they're feeling down and they want to just feel something different. Maybe they're not feeling anything at all and they want to feel something. It's none of my business why they're there. My only thing is that when they leave, hopefully they a little bit better than when they came in. So,
awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And some people just like to spoil everything. It's just a thing. Some people are into having to know the end and spoiling the end and letting everybody know the end. And I'm so glad I don't know. Like, even when I see magic, I don't want to know how the tricks are done. I don't even want to know that they're tricks. I just want to believe it's all real and it's really happening. Otherwise, it's not fun. I don't want that person that sits next to me in the movie theater that tells me, oh, you know how they made these dinosaurs in Jurassic Park? No, I don't want to know. Yeah. There's so many things in life that we know the answers to. Can't some things just be magic and mystic and we don't need to know the answers? We don't need to think of I have to be that one really smart person that knows how everything's done. Yeah, I don't want to be that person. I know too much about how everything's done.
Yeah.
I like things that I can't figure out.
Well, that's what I tell people. I told you earlier, I don't perform for like adolescents and children generally. And people ask me why. I said, I like to perform for adults, kids and adolescents. I mean, to a kid, a box is a castle. A cardboard tube is a sword. A soap bubble could be a boogeyman. Kids have enough magic in their life already. I like to perform for the men and women who go to a job they don't like to earn money they don't have, to buy things they don't need, to impress neighbors they don't know. I mean, those are the kind of people that need a little bit of magic in their life. And, if they feel better screaming from the theater, from theater seats, Peter Pan's on wires. Well, then, Peter Pan's on wires. I'm sorry, thanks for the $230 Broadway tickets. To spoil it for everybody else, we all knew Peter Pan was on wires. But, if that gets you through your day, then get through your day that way, So,
yes, I was just going to say that, right? I must be a psychic. I was just going to say that right before you talked, that I don't go to Peter Pan and look for the wires. And then you use that example. Either that means I'm truly a psychic, or we've just been best friends for an umpteen years.
Yeah, musical theater reference. Of course, we're both going to have the same musical theater reference.
You are wonderful, my friend. Where can people find you online? And let's do this again. I'd love it.
Find me online. Facebook. I mean, I still do the shows, but I don't do the business end of it anymore. I mean, I really kind of slowed down my performing schedule the last 5 years. But if you want to find me, reach out to Facebook. I'm sure we can probably put a link at the bottom of the recording here. Facebook, LinkedIn. I've got a copy of my book is available on library.com, which is spelled LYBRARY.com. Look up Kyle Merck there if you're interested in learning some of my stuff. And I guess that's all I've got to say about that.
Wonderful. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks to my wonderful friend Kyle Merck. I love you so much.
Oh, I love you, darling. We'll do this again.
Yes, soon. It'll be fun. Thanks to KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. If you want more about me, you can find me at SheenaMetalSpiritual.com, everywhere on social media at Sheena Metal. And also 818-437-0886. Please send me a text message. I'm so accessible, and I answer all my text messages, I promise. Until I see you next time, seek peace, live in love, lead with kindness, embrace unity, always work to raise your vibration, and know that you are loved and you are loved and you're so loved by me. I'm Sheena. This is the Sheena Metal Experience, KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. I'll see you next Friday at 3 o'clock Pacific time. Take care of you.